Hello and welcome to another Whispers from the Wood. Recently I co-led a workshop with Dave Watson from Woodland Survival Crafts. It was our wild food, foraging and wilderness cookery weekend, which was a lot of fun. And between teaching, we got the chance to sit down and have a conversation about the different areas of cooking in an outdoor campfire, using some cooking methods that people might not initially think of right away when cooking outdoors. And it's a conversation that we recorded, and that's what I'm going to share with you in this episode. I hope you find it useful. Well, hi Dave, thanks for bumping into me in the woods again. Always a good encounter. What I wanted to do is just have a little conversation with you about your concept that you've taught me on your courses about the 4 areas of the cooking fire. So I think that's something that people would be quite interested in, because we can all just boil a kettle on the fire, blast a lot of heat in it, and that works. But we could be more clever about how we manage the fire and how we use the different areas. Yeah. So do you want to explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, as you say, most folks understand 2 of the areas above the flames for boiling things.
Yeah.
The idea of cooking over the embers, yeah, not too complicated. But there's 2 other key areas of a fire. Outside rim, but just underneath the surface, so in the ashes.
Okay.
And then properly underneath a fire. But there's a bit more to it than that, because we need to have an established fire so that the ground is properly dried out. Now, this first one I mentioned, on this outside rim, there's a lot of heat, as you know. So as long as the ground is properly dried out, things like small potatoes, onions, which have got a bit of a skin, you could literally poke into the ground, get them where they're buried, and then carry on with some ashes and embers on top. And that will cook reasonably evenly with a little bit of experience. And it's really nice to have some simple cooking where there's nothing to wash up at the end. It's just, there's no utensils. It's just using our understanding of the level of heat.
And vegetables like that will cook in their own skin. We can peel away the outer layer of the skin and you've got some clean
absolutely.
food.
I mean, it's not that different to, like bananas and chocolate are well-known, dessert for, campfire cooking. But you just don't need foil. In fact, it's far more fun to just, slit them open so they rest into the ashes as a boat. And just, you can see when it's being cooked, but they've got a thick skin. So you don't want a super intensive barbecue, that would be too much. But just have steady, good quality heat. And it will cook things beautifully. But it brings a level of skill involved, but not rocket science. It's quite straightforward. The other one is, if you've had a fire, preferably overnight, and you're into the second day, but not exclusively. I get a spade and just go right into the fireplace, lift it up and put maybe a sweet potato in there, or a decent sized potato.
If you're wanting to cook in the ground directly under the fire, would you say it's best before you have the fire to prep the ground and pre-dig it?
Well, obviously the ground has got a value. You could probably get some drier stuff, and you certainly need to be aware that it's not peaty ground that could actually have a fire that lingers way after you've gone. Even when you think you've drowned it out, there might be some lingering stuff. And likewise, one of the things that you do have to be aware of is the history of a site. So not far away from where I am, in the National Forest, there's old coal seams.
Right.
Been covered over, but there's remaining bits of coal. You wouldn't detect them, but you get a fire going enough, you just could start a ground fire. And you may have poured lots of water over it, and you may have had good reason to think it's out, but it may not be. So do be aware of the ground, properly. But usually the average sort of, rich woodland, it's quite, sort of soft old leaf litter and the like, and it's fine. We're using an established fire, so we've made that choice. Yes, we're going to have an impact, but this is going to be here for years. Like my site, I've had it for 20 plus years.
This cooking in the ground is kind of to me, seems more suitable for your base camp setup rather than
you
out
want
and about.
if you're going to be moving around a lot and the like, it's not to be recommended, because we are going to damage a certain amount of roots and we're going to do this. So it wants to be an investment. But for many folks that are using this as an educational tool, it might be in school grounds, and that sort of makes good sense to, right, let's have this fire, we're going to use it year after year after year, and lots of people are going to develop good understanding and confidence for life in these sorts of skills, and I think that's a good trade-off if we're learning to do these things well. Experience counts for a great deal. We get some guides. A good established fire with an average sweet potato is going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours. Your first attempts, if the ground's a little bit damp underneath, the bottom may not be cooked, the top might be overcooked, but the bulk of it inside is perfectly cooked. That's a level of success. You haven't got to have it to the perfect cook, and it's quite tricky to do so, because even when everything's about right, the underside is less likely to be as well cooked as the very top. But if you can get a well-established fire when the ground is really warmed up, only the very top is likely to get burnt.
And how deep down are you talking for something like a sweet potato?
You basically just want it where you can put the fire back on and the hot embers are not touching.
Right.
So as long as it's deep enough for that, then don't go much deeper, because it's very difficult to get the ground really hot underneath that level. We've got, 3 to 4 inches.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about playing with it and seeing what you can do, and stick some potatoes or onions or whatever bits in. No great loss if they do get burned, but you're learning by practicing and playing and what can be done.
Although it's part of the embers, what we did today with the fish and some of the small parcels of meat, we wrapped in leaves. So much nicer than using foil, because again, it really helps people, the fine-tuning of cooking, rather than to stick it in foil, just forget it for a while, and then hopefully it'll be cooked. It's like, no, let's put a little bit of finesse into this. All it takes is a little bit of focus, and this can be the start of someone's journey to becoming a chef. And it certainly is a great tool, as is many of the bushcraft skills, for building real confidence for people, because part of this journey is learning to play, learning to experiment. And yes, the first ones are unlikely to be spot on, but it's levels of success. It's not levels of failure, it's levels of success. If some part of it is cooked, that's success. You then take it to a higher level of success.
And just quickly, another question that we get a lot, people ask, how do I establish a good bed of embers? So, what firewood are we talking about? What they need to do to get that nice bed of embers so they can play with this style of cooking?
You certainly need some good sized seasoned wood. You don't want wood that's not quite dried out. It smokes an awful lot. Some woods do spit a lot, so do be careful. Sweet chestnut is notable for spitting, and willow can be quite a
And we're
spitter.
talking hardwoods for embers.
They're better. The softer woods we were using were sizable pieces, well seasoned, and they have worked well. Having a mixture is normally a fail-safe, if you're not sure. But decent sized hardwoods are not too light. I wouldn't use lime or poplar. I wouldn't really use willow, unless that's all I've got. But some of the woods that we've got a higher level, higher density, things like hazel, ash, beech, fantastic, oak, they're great. But the trick is to really get it going. Don't hold back. Get a really good fire going so that you can put decent sized blocks of wood on. Not huge ones, because they're good for overnight and keeping the fire on tick over. But it depends what you're trying to cook overall. For keeping the fire in with the stuff under the ground, we don't want loads of flame. We don't need that. We'd want this steady tick over of hot embers there. And this is a good cooking fire. If we open this big block away, we've got a really good set of embers if we wanted to cook things on those embers, but it's also, it's an oven underneath there. It's been going most of the day now. This is a really good oven underneath there. A long fire is great. You can have one section, you know, with good embers, and then the other section can be blazing away. And as that settles down, you swap over. That was certainly a technique I used a lot when I was out for a few days. And you'd cook a meal, I mean, with a bit of planning over, say, a 3-hour period, you get the fire established, you've got a blaze, so get your water boiled. And reading ahead, knowing that it's going to settle to really good embers, then just a steady tick over, and start thinking, well, you know, how can I capitalise on that and finish with the least amount of effort, so that we don't have to pour gallons of water on a fire because of absolutely stacks of burning embers that we're not going to use. But obviously we need to make sure the fire is extinguished. And, you know, if we've got a fire like this, it's not just the surface we need to extinguish, it's what's underneath. Can it be smouldering away?
Well, plenty of food for thought, and maybe the subject of making a no-trace fire when you're out trekking is the subject of another video. Yeah, the midges are coming down. I can start to feel a few bites on my arms. It's probably time we wrapped up and went home, but that was really interesting. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Well, I hope you found that inspiring and that there's some top tips there to use in your own outdoor cooking. Thanks very much for watching, and if you like this video, don't forget to, of course, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and leave a comment if you've got a question about any of the methods that we've talked about in the video. And I'll see you soon for another Whispers from the Wood. Bye bye.